Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay. Nice.
All right, here we go. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to Cripple. I'm Emily Sarah. This is our inaugural presentation of our Disabled Artist Lecture Series. Uh, I'm Emily Sarah, like I said. I'm the founder of Cripple, and I'm really excited to be kicking everything off today with Bryan Castro. He's going to be talking about his work while simultaneously doing a performance called the ABC of Medium Stuttered. To describe my screen, I am a white and femme. I have pink hair with messy braids. It's way too hot for any other type of hair for me right now. Oversized glasses on my hands and arm, tattoos and whatnot. And my pronouns are she, her. So today, Bryan will be presenting for a little bit under an hour. Bryan, I'll give you a heads up via text on the back end at like 15 minutes prior. And about 5 minutes before, I think we will wrap up to give some time for like some questions from Bryan or anything at all that you might want to ask. So we're recording today and everything is going to be posted online, and I'll be emailing out that link to everyone. So you have a record of that as well. Additionally, if you need captions, they're located at the bottom of the screen that you can click on captions, and they're automated. They should pop up. You can also move your captions box around if you're unaware of that, in case if it blocks anything that is just on the screen that you want to be reading. We also have Corey assisting us with ASL today. So thank you so much, Corey. Yeah, if we're ever talking too fast or anything, please feel free to interrupt us and let us know. So Corey's screen should be available. It's pinned right now for everyone, but if you ever are having any issues or any connection issues, you can message me in chat and I'll try and help you as much as possible. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Bryan. So Bryan Castro, born 1994 in Passaic, New Jersey, is a disabled conceptual artist who stutters. His constantly evolving work materializes as visual poetry by redefining and combining painting, drawing, printmaking, collage, and installation. So Bryan's counter text practice expands upon the idea of mediums stuttered, an artistic discursive philosophy about visualizing and performing disfluency. In 2017, he was an alumni of Rutgers University, graduating with a BFA in visual arts with a concentration in media. Bryan got his MFA in painting and printmaking at VCU, or Virginia Commonwealth University, in 2020. His artwork was in shows at the Institute of Contemporary Art at VCU, Slash Art in San Francisco, the Black Ground Laboratorio Cultural in Cali, Colombia. He's been an artist in residence in the core residency program at the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, a visiting artist at the Anderson Ranch Artist Center in Snowmass, Colorado. Sorry, not California. And he currently lives and works in the Metro Orlando area of Florida. All right. So,
Thank you, Emily.
of course, I'm going to mute myself and you can take it away, Bryan. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I'm gonna share my screen. Um, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna put it in slideshow, and I just wanted to check. Hey, Emily. Can you see this screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, cool, awesome.
Thank you.
Cool, awesome. Okay, I'm just gonna start my stopwatch too, just to try to keep myself on time. Uh, okay, cool. Here we go. Hello, hello, hello. Are you there? My name is Bryan Castro, and welcome to my artist lecture on mediums stuttered, an artistic discursive philosophy about visualizing and performing disfluency. This philosophy is the conceptual framework for my artwork and practice. It is about art, not necessarily art itself. The A.B.C are components of the concept of mediums stuttered, which stand for three primary ideas: a poetics of interruption, language in the expanded field, and counter text. My first three black screens have text with fluorescent green that read The A.B.C of Mediums Stuttered, an artist talk by Bryan Castro, as part of Cripple's Disabled Artists Lecture series. Every slide in this presentation has a background color with foreground text that has color too. Most of this text and the background are made to look like closed captions against a still image screen of color. Most of this text is not what I'm saying. I'm reading from a script instead. There are three parts to this pseudo performance, and then the credits. Now, without further ado, it's time to begin. Sit up, relax, and listen. Part one. It was back in the days when I met a brilliant student named Doom. Now, what happened? MF Doom's album is full of obscure samples. MF Doom's album, Food, is full of obscure samples and sounds that combine to make a collage, with samples pulled from all kinds of old television shows and films. As a matter of fact, that's the nature of our own existence. Do you mean to suggest that I am a sample? Our voices, yes. Medium Stuttered is about your voice, my voice, our voice, and their voice being a sample or many samples. For this artist talk, my voice is many samples. What's at stake now and in danger of being lost is an expansive view of culture as a set of crucial and common freedoms, replaced by one based on mere consumption or co-opting, on samples going to those who can afford it and not to the most inventive. I miss some of the shared floating verses, the common culture of backbeats, and shared samples that governed hip hop at its earliest and finest. There was a strangeness to hip hop before the lawsuits. Hip hop artists would sample not just the obvious and not even use one sample or giant hook. Still, many sounds layered over each other in a commanding collage of cultures. To hear such references, themselves a form of reverence, years later at a dance party, is filled with nostalgia and possibility. This is partly because a reminisce, as critic Louis Menon reminds us, was a late 19th century term for a poetic borrowing. Such allusions and borrowings are forms of memory and may prove just as interesting as Dante was to Eliot. In just 3 minutes and 16 seconds, De La Soul can invoke music history, dare I say recorded history, as a manifesto of their very being, signifying being a three-person group, not to mention the trinity of meanings that have governed Western culture. So what if it wasn't made from scratch? Hip hop is not hip hop is not so much canned as it uses the best ingredients you find in the pantry, some of which you do not want to grow yourself. A good cook or DJ or post soul artist puts his or her foot in it, can make most anything sing. Culture is a collage of voices or samples. Is medium stuttered an Afro visualist practice? By dug up, I'm referring to how I found and put together the concept of mediums stuttered. The name may be new, but everything else was found and put together using a methodology similar to crate digging. The Afro visualist practice is centered on the crate digger methodology. Crate digging as a self initiated archival research practice that contextualizes Black aesthetics and its parallels with Black cultural production along a visual sonic continuum. Crate digging is integral to the Afro-visualist practice, as it places a self-driven, referential-based artist practice in alignment with DJ culture. DJ Lynn Dennis coined the term DJ scholarship, which describes DJ culture as a mixed mode research practice. In addition to DJ Spooky Rhythms science, DJing is writing, writing is DJing. Adam J. Banks' digital grit, garrots, crate digging as continual research. By grounding Questlove, DJ Lynn Dennis, and DJ Spooky Rhythm as frames of reference, Afro-visualism furthers this notion as crate digging as a continuum by establishing the latent continuity of the dig, a rhythmic integration of research, curatorial, and design practices. As the present felt increasingly endless, my relationship to the past evolved. The DJ sets became historical in a different sense. The songs I selected evoked not just a feeling, but also the center of a network of ideas, references, and questions, a sonic exhibit. Hip hop has always been historically minded, even curatorial in how it uses samples. Pieces of songs are collected and organized so the past serves the present while standing up for itself. In this spirit, I sought to understand an object's significance in its original context and the pleasure it could still produce. Another title of my presentation I was thinking of having is based on a quote I found in Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. In the book's epilogue, she quotes Paul Gardner, who says, "Paintings are never finished. They simply stop at interesting places." In my bio statement, I say I'm a conceptual artist. I say I'm a disabled conceptual artist who stutters. This statement means a lot of things, one being that my practice springs forth from the idea of mediums stuttered. Being an artist who stutters also means that I'm a disabled artist because I frequently stutter in my speech, which affects my life and work in small yet profound ways. Instead of saying I'm a stutterer, I say I'm a person who stutters to signify that stuttering is just a part of me and doesn't define my whole identity. By visual poetry, I'm talking about an experimental approach to language, drawing from various historical and contemporary influences that build upon a tradition of artists who have pushed the boundaries of text and image, such as the futurists, Dadaists, and Fluxus artist. His work is informed by poetic sensibility. This poetic approach to language allows him to create a sense of ambiguity and multiple layers of meaning, further disrupting the viewer's expectations and inviting a more subjective, interpretive engagement with the work. It is not by using text in his work, but the fact that his texts are used as a structural element that guide his compositions that his work comes to exist at the interface of abstract painting and visual poetry, where the objective is to evoke their subject matter rather than simply describe it. Medium Stuttered is the conceptual framework and philosophy supporting my artwork. It is an artistic, discursive philosophy about visualizing and performing disfluency. The image of my painting in the promo photo is based on this idea. That double sided chalkboard painting not only illustrates and expands the concept of medium stuttered, but it is self contained. As an artist, I value writing, thinking, and talking about art because I don't believe in the idea that artworks should be able to speak for themselves. Without titles, descriptions, artist statements, artist bios, artist talks, artist monographs, and more, I would not be here today as an artist and appreciator of artworks. Now, whenever I talk, write, think, and make, people must understand that I'm working between being a collagist and a writer. I'm always using found language and trying to stick it with my original language. So the words I use point not deeper into my originality, but point to a synthesis of ideas from other folks with my own thoughts. A Poetics of Interruption points to Andrew Brooks' work, specifically the section Stutter in his paper, Poetics of Interruption, Fugitive Speech Acts and the Politics of Noise. Language in the expanded field points to Travis Jemson's work, precisely his paper, All That Scrawl, toward a wild writing. The idea of a countertext artwork versus a text based artwork comes from Kim DeLeon's work, especially her book, Countertext Language in Contemporary Art. Countertext refers to Kim DeLeon's book, which uses the phrase counter languages she sampled from Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks said, "The oppressor's language was needed to speak to one another and then nevertheless reinvented. They remade their language so that it would speak beyond the boundaries of conquest and domination. Enslaved Black people took a broken bit of English and made them a counter language." Kim DeLeon says, typically these works might be called text based in contemporary art, but to me, text based implies that the works rest in language and are rooted in it without consequence. I'll explore later how these artworks act as text within and against the directional flow in language, interrupting it, subverting it. Another reason I call myself a conceptual artist is because the title of conceptual artist is generative and gives me at least a lot to think about and respond to in my work. One idea in conceptual art, specifically from Solowitz's sentences on conceptual art, is his sentence about concepts and ideas. He says, "The concept and idea are different. The former implies a general direction, while the latter is the components. Ideas implement the concept." I chose to call medium stuttered an idea because of the multiple definitions that an idea could be: an opinion, belief, aim, purpose, thought, or suggestion to a possible course of action. I look at medium stutter the way solo wit looks at a concept, and the Oxford Dictionary defines an idea. I'm responding to another part of Solowit's writing. In conceptual art, the idea or concept is the most important aspect of the work. The idea or concept of medium stuttered is not the most crucial aspect of my work, because when it is the most critical aspect of my work, then I'm overthinking and not doing enough painting, drawing, collaging, printmaking, or making installations. But then again, I agree with other parts of Solowitz' writing, such as these sentences comment on art but are not art. The same is true for mediums stuttered. It is not art, but sentences, paragraphs, manifestos, comments, and other writing on art and my artwork. Despite medium stuttered not being art, it is less my thoughts and more of a collage or DJ mix with different voices, writers, and such coming together. Medium Stuttered redefines Gilles Deleuze's essay, He Stuttered, by branching from novel and short story writing into other mediums. Again, this branching out is not original. Writers have written about Deleuze's ideas, concepts about stuttering in relation to other artists such as Adam Pendleton, Christopher Knowles, Alvin Lucier, and others. Conceptual as in an aberrant direction. Part 2. What is mediums stuttered? Medium stuttered is about how, across media, I'm interested in this kind of stuttering and this inability to articulate. It's an ever expanding investigation into the relationships between disfluency, linguistics, disability, the arts, and more. Medium Stuttered is the gathering, intersection, investigation, interruption, and stream of many flows, voices, and samples. Medium Stuttered is a collage of manifestos, concepts, notions, theories, projects, and writings. Medium Stuttered is a conceptual framework for practicing any medium in the arts in aberrant, non-canonical, and non-academic ways to fit your needs and constraints. Medium Stuttered is about artwork that writes stutters, interruptions, and noises into a text or any medium as text. Medium Stuttered is a framework for any creative artistic project or series of artworks that operates linguistically. Medium Stuttered is a map that helps clarify an artistic vision by offering disfluency positive and disfluency negative perspectives. Medium Stuttered comes into play whenever we want to learn, relearn, and unlearn the language of painting, drawing, writing, and any other medium in the arts through writing, talking, and thinking about art. This process could also be undertaken within a studio practice where making art via traditional and non-traditional materials and processes takes priority over commenting about art. Medium Stuttered is about artwork where forms of writing, handwriting, or brushwork interrupt the flow of language in the artwork itself. Medium Stuttered is about the language of any medium of the arts glitching from within or being interrupted, stuttered, or atomized? A. Medium stuttered is a poetics of interruption. A stutter is an interruption in the flow of speech, or the eruption of noise in a signal produced by the involuntary repetition, distortion, prolongation, or suspension of phonemes. Stuttering is a more stuttering is a more explosive generative noise that interrupts common sense and idealized conceptions of the voice that posit the voice as functioning in the service of systematized meaning manifest as speech, interrupting the flow of language, or rather, the idea that language is ordered by a logic that always precedes it. The stutter is considered an operation that opens language to processes of continuous variation. English, because of its very hegemony, is constantly being worked on from within by the minorities of the world, who nibble away at that hegemony and create the possibility of new mythic functions, new cultural references, new vernacular languages with their own uses. British English is set in variation by Gaelic and Irish English. American English is set in variation by Black English and various quote unquote ghetto languages, which cannot be defined simply as a sum of mistakes or infractions against standard English. Break the world of standard English to do your language. And I didn't sound like a Black American. College acquaintances observed. Sure, they knew what a Black person was supposed to sound like. Was I supposed to sound lazy, dropping syllables here and there, not finishing words, but slurring the final letter so that each sentence joined the next, sliding past the listener? I asked what they meant, and they stuttered, blushed, and said, Black English, applying what they learned from that semester's text. Medium stuttered is about letting go of control and changing direction when necessary. Medium stuttered is about stuttering in all types of media and how most types of mass media would rather not have any form of stuttering for fear of dead air from a speech block, taking up too much airtime from a stutter of words, or the look of a stutterer's face when they are stuttering. Medium stuttered is about embracing blocks and irregular flows when working and in a person's work. Medium stuttered is about embracing a change of direction when working with language and its flow. Medium stuttered is about affirming elements of a work that wasn't part of the artist's plan of action, sketches, mock ups, and intention. B. Medium stutter is built on the concept of language in the expanded field, a name from Travis Jemson's article, All That Wild Scrawl, and Rosaline Cross's Sculpture in the Expanded Field. This field characterizes the domain of postmodernism, where the purity of modernism is cast aside and an artist is free to utilize any medium necessary. Expanding the scope of language includes, but is not limited to, bifurcation, variation, heter- heterogenesis, heterogenesis, and modulation. This is not about defying meaning formation, but about embracing other means of making meaning. In the words of literary critic Marjorie Perloff, it is a poetics of interdeterminacy, language in the expanded field. Medium Stuttered is about how the image is functioning linguistically. This is why I have always said that the idea of blackness operates rhetorically. This materially black figure has to be situated within the larger context as a linguistic figure amongst other linguistics, statistics, or as a pictorial figure within the context of other pictorial elements. The way that every mark in a picture is a linguistic character in the sense that we deploy these marks to construct specific meanings and relationships. One of the reasons why the figure works so effectively for me is because I'm thinking of it in those terms as an abstract linguistic figure and at the same time as an absolute sign or a symbol of something. I understood that language structure continuously modifies meaning. It never disappears. It simply finds other contexts in which the figure can be used. However, recognizing language's role in those terms imposes a particular responsibility. Whenever communication is an issue, a certain kind of clarity is essential. So you must be responsible for how you use language. That's why it takes me so long to make pictures. When I insert a figure into a painting space, I have to consider everything it means and then construct, edit, and revise it to reach its maximum effect so that blackness becomes a noun, not an adjective. Medium Stuttered is about how Toni Morrison defined language as saying, listening, reading. Medium Stuttered is how you read certain authors because you love how they use the language, not simply because they have language fluency. Having language fluency in itself is relatively benign, but the uses of language become very complicated. Deleuze's aesthetics of intensities is meant to dismantle the logocentric paradigm and its rigid conceptions of language. C. Medium Stuttered is the mission and goals. Medium Stuttered adopts the missions and goals of countertext artworks and practices. A countertext practice has several missions and goals, which all are taken from Kim Dillon's book, Countertext, Language in Contemporary Art. These missions and goals are the following: interrupt the directionality of language and its power, reorient the directional flow of language, demonstrate via the artwork a relationship to a critical inquiry of inscribed language and how it informs identity or experience through reading and looking. Interrogate language itself as a tool of structural oppression. Dismantle the idea of neutrality in the material form of language by using words as a visual art medium. Probe language to question the powers within it and the power it upholds. Disrupt the flow of power. As a system, language holds up greater structures, but it is also a structure itself. At times, I am upholding the system. The current flows on. At other times, I am attempting to disrupt it. interrupt it, wading against it, walking upstream. Challenge the very possibility of, of legibility, unsettle, disrupt, and disturb, halt the directional flow of language, interrupt, reveal the power within language, rip it open, and lay it bare on canvas. Bring out the reader in the work. Create artworks acting as text within and against the directional flow in language, interrupting and subverting it. Operate from a position of awareness of language as a construct and its role in more considerable systematic oppression. Refuse the directional flow of the current of power and turn against it. Interrupt and disrupt larger systems within the language and right through it. Language is the superstructure holding up the bridge of supremacy, but like any system, it can be dismantled. Fluency and stutter, the articulate and the broken. Part 3. What is stuttering? Stuttering is an open-ended signifier, an abstraction, and a mode of inquiry. Stuttering is a possible condition of language itself. Language is a challenging rhizome. Language is a system far from equilibrium, a system in perpetual imbalance, such that there is no difference of level between language and speech. But language is constituted by all sorts of heterogeneous genuous currents in disequilibrium with one another. Poetic language can infect any genre of text where the efforts of such people are intended to make the language stutter, unlike Porky Pig or the King in King's Speech. It's about those texts where the efforts of such people are intended to make the language as such stutter, a stuttering in which every position of the word gives off a vibration and a sentence is an infinitely varied line. What is disfluency? Medical professionals have categorized stuttering, also referred to as disfluency, as a communicative disorder with a distinct biological basis. But what if disfluency was understood as being constructed by multiple individuals? Due to the dialogical nature of stuttering, there needs to be a listener for it to take place. It's disfluency that is arguably constructed by speaker, reader, and hearer. The term disfluency, spelled DIS, is similarly used to indicate a type of speech that is merely not fluent. It is a sterile and clinical term that turns our wild forms of speech variation into a simple lack or failure, judged against the presumed normalcy and desirability of smooth speech. This disfluent hides its values behind an apparent objectivity. Accordingly, we consider disfluency, spelled with DYS, a far more honest term than disfluency, spelled with DIS. While the latter themes at being objective and sterile. The former, disfluent, spelled DYS, recognizes that when we stutter, we are not simply performing a lack, but we are transgressing the entire moral code of how society expects us to speak. To stutter is to disobey, to overstep the narrow boundaries of able-bodied speech. Chris Constantino recently claimed that stuttering is a form of civil disobedience. Using the term disfluent, spelled DYS, helps us at the Did I Stutter project be aware of the subversive possibilities of our unpredictable and unruly speech. If stuttering is transgressive, let's own that and make it ours. In everyday life, stuttering, clinically defined as a speech disorder that involves frequent and significant problems with normal fluency and flow of speech. Alvin Lucier stutters, the linguistic equivalent of stumbling. Picture how a person engaging in what is labeled as spastic dancing will destabilize the general multiplicity of a dance floor, not by being excluded from that floor, but by bringing it into a different rhythm, by making perhaps the habitual rhythm stumble. Sometimes one imperceptibly slight stumbling may cause a marching group to begin to dance. Stuttering, in other words, is less a condition that does or does not exist than a rate at which one aspect of the standard mechanism of speech can no longer be overlooked or ignored. Stuttering in the creative power in the failure of word and language, Deleuze conceptualizes stuttering as not as a feature of an individual speaker, but as a possible condition of language itself. In other words, stuttering is not language use, i.e., speech, but an inherent feature of language. Stuttering is various levels of perception: creative stuttering, reflexive connections, combining a word with its own elements, a vertical uh, layering added to the horizontal axis of language, creating a foreign language with a language, and not mixing a language in speech via bilingualism or multilingualism. Creative stuttering makes language grow from the middle, like grass. Stammering or stuttering can be understood as a movement of words falling forward based on an imbalance in the language. Stuttering can therefore be understood as generating a constant becoming. It is not about the damaging language, but about creative progression having imbalance at its starting point. A creative stuttering in movement. Did I stutter? Everyone stutters. Statistically, between 7 and 10% of all speech is disfluent, with phonemes repeated, prolonged, distorted, suspended, or even sometimes not audibly produced. That the king can say it fluently cements his position as ruler of the British Empire. Why is saying something fluently so valuable? It shows control of oneself and facilitates unconstrained, effective communication. To some, it produces the best delivery free of defects. The conception of quote unquote not having a ready tongue. Deleuze and He Stuttered extends the stutter beyond speech by arguing that by stuttering in language, writers can make the language itself stutter via inclusive disjunctions, asignifying particles, and repeated substantives. Stutter has the same old High German root as the modern German stoßen, meaning to knock, strike against, collide. Lucier literally disables the world through his speech. Who is a stutterer? The stutterer is not only a foreigner in his own language, but also, notably, a traitor who dismantles standard interpretations to break open embedded opinions and to reach areas where there are no memories. Word work is sublime, she thinks, because it is generative. It makes meaning that secures our difference, our human difference, how we are like no other life. We die. That may be the meaning of life, but we do language. That may be the measure of our lives. Often we discover who we are based because we come in contact with people from other cultures. Through language's poverty, we gain the illusion of being understandable. Well, that's it. I really hope you enjoyed it. We had a ball making it. Thank you very much. The end ish. Thank you, everybody.